Today's video provides 5 valuable tips for writing a thesis. If you've clicked on this video, you're probably in the final stages of your studies. You're likely wondering what to keep in mind when writing your thesis and which tips can make the writing process easier. Let's get started. Tip number 1, the roadmap. It's essential to create a roadmap that includes the different stages of your thesis. Stages could be creating an outline or writing individual chapters. Proofreading and compiling the bibliography can also be considered stages. The roadmap should also include a rough timeline so that you always have an overview of how much you've already accomplished and how much still remains. It's crucial, however, to also build in buffer stages. These can be used if a particular stage takes much more time than originally planned. If you find yourself ahead of schedule, you can also use these buffer stages as a break and take a few days off from writing to recharge. Tip number 2, keep the research question in mind. The quality of your thesis largely depends on how well you manage to answer the research question sufficiently. However, as you write, it's common to drift away from the main topic and the goal of answering the research question. It helps to keep the question literally in front of your eyes at all times. The best way to do this is to hang the question above your desk or read it out loud before starting each writing session. Tip number 3, record sources immediately. Often, when you're in the flow of writing, you tend to reference sources incompletely at first. This might mean that sources are shortened or only fully compiled later, but this leads to unnecessary and tedious work at the end. When you try to enter the source at the very end, the big search begins. Abbreviations may no longer make sense, one source might not be found anymore, and in the worst case, a source might even be forgotten altogether. To avoid this, you should get into the habit of entering the full sources right away in the bibliography and in the text or in the footnotes. However, if this severely interrupts your writing flow, you can at least deal with the sources at the end of each writing session. This way, your citations are always up to date. Tip number 4, see your thesis as a product. You should imagine that your thesis is a product, like a book to be published or an audiobook, rather than just something you have to produce to get your degree. If you view your thesis as a product, you'll approach it with a completely different motivation and writing style. You'll be much more critical and creative because you wouldn't want to release a boring product full of mistakes. Moreover, you won't approach the submission of your thesis with anxiety, but with excitement, as you'll be curious to see how your product will be received. And finally, tip number 5, take it easy. Since you'll generally spend much more time on your thesis than on any other topic during your studies, you shouldn't take it too seriously. Hobbies and spending time with friends shouldn't fall by the wayside, otherwise you risk losing interest in the topic, which can make writing feel like torture. Try to deliver the best possible work without putting too much pressure on yourself, as this often has a negative impact on the thesis. If you continue to maintain a balance between work and leisure, you'll approach writing with a much more positive attitude, which in turn will positively affect the outcome of your thesis. So that's it for the 5 tips. Of course, these are just personal tips for working on a thesis. They don't automatically guarantee a great thesis, but they can greatly increase your chances. Not every tip is suitable for every student, but if you find 1 or 2 tips helpful, give them a try. We hope this video has helped you. See you next time and have a good one.